Welcome to the Decentralized Consciousness podcast. And today I'm here with Hurley. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Hey, Sama.
So it's been a while. So Hurley here, he participated in the first men's group for Bitcoiners that I created about 1 year ago now. And now I haven't heard from him for a while, but I've seen that Hurley has tweeted about some different interests coming up. So I'm curious to see where this conversation will take us. Hurley, how are you doing these days?
I feel like I've been pretty good, Sama. I know it's been a while. That first men's group that you started, which you told me you started kind of on a whim and you had a vision and it all just kind of aligned. It seemed like it came at the perfect time in my life. And I got a lot of benefit out of it. It was a great group of guys. We really connected and shared, meditated. And that summer, I was really kind of going deep. I was meditating myself a lot, experimenting with psychedelics and yeah, just kind of peeling back some layers of myself, and it felt really good. And then I'm trying to think of what the moment was that I started to kind of come away from that a little bit.
I remember you had a very intense year because your father also passed away. Was it during the men's group?
It was, yeah, it would have been right around the time that we started, interestingly enough, I think.
And also during the men's group, you got your new job at Swan.
That's right. Yeah, lots of changes. Yeah, that's right. So basically, I heard about the men's group while I was in Costa Rica with my family. I've got two little girls, 5 and 3, and a third one on the way, which was one of the big shifts and changes that happened last year. Late into the year, we found out that my wife was pregnant again. So we were in Costa Rica for 3 months to kind of escape the craziness that was happening in Canada around the COVID stuff and the lockdowns and the mandates. And we felt like we were going crazy a little bit in Canada. So we moved out of our apartment that we had been in for, 8 years in Toronto. And in the span of about 2 or 3 weeks, we moved out of our apartment, sold and gave away, donated a bunch of our stuff and stored the rest of it in a small 10 by 10 storage unit. And we went to Costa Rica for 3 months, kind of like a reset. And it was amazing. We had an amazing experience there. It was really met so many really just high frequency people, like just people kind of that felt like they were kind of spiritually aligned with where we were and more freedom oriented.
Did you ever go to this Bitcoin retreat center, Awake, there in Uvita? Did you go there?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't go to Uvita, and it's funny that we were on the Nicoya Peninsula, in this area that's like around Montezuma Beach, and Santa Teresa Beach, and this place called Kabuya, which is kind of in between the two. We stayed in that area just because the reason we went there was actually because of Bitcoiners, some Bitcoiners that I met at the Toronto Bitcoiner meetup, along with Tomer and Matt. And they had this tea shop in Toronto, and they everyone that went to these meetups were aligned with how crazy everything was happening, or everything seemed in Canada and in the world. And they were being forced to enforce the vaccine mandate in their tea shop, and they were like, we can't do this. We just don't feel right about it. So they moved to Costa Rica first, and they went to that area anyway. So we went to the same area with them and hung out with them, and then. It wasn't, and while we were there, basically the Bitcoin jungle, which is in Uvita, started to pop up while we were there. And now there's like a whole circular economy going on there. I know Costa Rica is happening in Uvita in, I think, a week or two, whenever that is happening. But so it's kind of crazy that it just seems like a lot of Bitcoiners were going there and were hanging out there. So it was a very high signal place. And even the non-Bitcoiners that were there, they were I was talking with Matt yesterday, and the best way to describe it was it felt like people were operating on a different frequency there. Like there weren't as many people kind of lost in the matrix, so to say. And so anyway,
Mm.
we had a great experience there. We loved it. We didn't want to leave, but we had to come back because we had we've got family here. We've got both of our parents are here. They want to see their grandkids. We had a storage unit of stuff. So we came back, and we lived in the in-laws house for a couple months while they were away in Newfoundland. And so basically I had heard about the men's group while we were in Costa Rica through Tomer. And I was like, this sounds right up my alley. I had already listened to a few of your podcasts and read a few of your articles. So I knew of you, and I was like, okay, this sounds really cool. So I signed up while I think it was our last few weeks in Costa Rica. And when we got back, it would have been in early April of 2022. And then, so basically a week after I got back into Canada, I found out my dad died.
Did you
And it
get to
was,
see him before he died?
I didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't. It was really,
Mm.
that was one of the harder parts of it. But I mean, we really, really bonded over the last, I would say, year, maybe year and a half, more so than we ever have in our life. Because it felt like we were on a similar kind of spiritual path and journey. And so I didn't get to see him, but we talked every week on Sunday. It was like our Sunday night after I put the kids to bed. I would call him, and we did that for about a year and a half. We would talk for sometimes for hours, and that was when I realized that face to face is great, but you can connect with someone. Like that whole thing where space is an illusion. Like when he passed, I was like, man, I realized I hadn't seen him in months, but it didn't feel like that because I'd connected with him. It didn't feel like I hadn't seen him, right? So that was interesting, but it was definitely tough to lose him, especially he was one of the few men, and just the few people in my life that felt like understood and could relate to the journey I was going on, and just even just like talking about how crazy everything seemed in the world, where most people in my life are kind of asleep to it. So that's been the hardest part for me is losing that person.
And in a way, I remember also you said that you sort of lost your friends because you couldn't relate to them anymore and what they were talking about, like your
Yeah.
childhood friends.
Yeah, exactly. I've a close knit group of friends from all the way back in grade school that we've hung, and it's just, I don't know if it's shared experience because we grew up in the same area or whatever, but we just stayed friends. We used to play video games when we were in high school, and smoke weed, smoke marijuana, and so we just had this like long friendship. And since basically since having this kind of, I guess, quasi spiritual awakening and finding Bitcoin and going down that rabbit hole and having a lot of my preconceived ideas and notions around how the world works, and just like basically exiting the matrix is the best way that I can think to describe it. Like I think that really is the perfect description of it, because we all grew up in that world and were raised in that world, and we know what it's like to be in the matrix. And so once you're out of it, it's like you can't unsee the backwardsness of how we used to live. And so I found it really hard to relate to my friends basically since, I would say, around COVID and after COVID. And so that was tough. So it's like I'm trying to search for a new community of people that understand me and that align with my beliefs and stuff like that. Like I don't play video games anymore. I don't watch sports anymore. I don't smoke marijuana anymore. So it's like those ties that I had to those people, it really made me question like what makes a good friend? What makes, you know, what what are the qualities that make a good friendship and a good relationship with other people?
That's very interesting because I actually been thinking about this recently. Maybe I can share my thoughts and you can see what you say.
Sure.
So I was considering this more from an engineering perspective, like because I experience myself as an energy body. I experience myself as decentralized. Like I don't have so much like a rational mind, right? So I'm more like I have a rational mind, but that's just one node. But then you have emotions, then I have intuition, then I have all the senses, inner and outer senses, inner guidance, and all these things. And it's like they're all important. And I listen to all of them. They are sort of guiding me forward. It's some kind of consensus going on. So I experience myself as an energy body. So when I was thinking about friendships, let's say I'm a self-sustained system. My energy is just coming from within. So when I'm alone, I'm just like self-sustaining. And then when I interact with someone, I give energy to that person. And what that person do with the energy, that is what determines if he's a friend or not.
Wow.
So if he uses the energy to strengthen himself and to be stronger, like if my presence helps him to become stronger, then he helps me to become stronger. But if that person is just looking at my contribution or what I say or what I do and discard it, like, okay, yeah, that's fine, you do whatever I do, but I will continue to live the way I live, then it feels to me like this is like a leakage of my energy. It's like I
Mm.
give, but it's not, it's like an investment. So I
Mm.
invest in someone, I invest time and energy. And if I don't feel that this is reinvested somehow, or if it's just taken for granted, then I feel sort of taken advantage of because I don't get that support back. It's like my energy and my time just disappears out of nowhere. And what this has resulted in is that I have people that are more like me, trying to heal themselves, because then it becomes a supportive friendship.
Wow. Yeah. I really like that. I mean, we all know it. It's like other people, they say you just get energy from, eating. That's what science or biology would say, right? We eat food to get energy, but it's so obvious that energy is constantly flowing in and through us. And I personally have 100% experience getting energy from other people. And while you were saying that, I was kind of like feeling your energy, to be honest. Like and I really like that idea of a good friend is their energy is being used to kind of like, it's like that. There's no energy leakage in a good friendship. I like that idea, or that the way that you framed it like that, because that feels right to me. Like even just when we've meditated and stuff like that, like, and with the men's group, like I felt like you don't need to be in the same presence with someone. That's the amazing thing about it. You can just transmit energy and receive energy from other people, like telepathically or something. I don't even know. It's like it's incredible. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that, never mind the actions or what you say or whatever. That's the best way to describe it too. When I do talk with my old friends, it's like I need to lower my frequency, and it can become a little bit exhausting for me. And maybe that's what you're talking about. It's the leaking of energy. Like sometimes I feel like I can every once in a while, because it's like I still value them. I still And I think the value that I have for my old friends is probably based in shared experience and just kind of, I guess, my identity as, I don't know, but I care about them, and like I love them, like I do, but but I found myself having less time for them, I guess, and kind of putting my time in investing my time in other things and not in. And I guess I feel a little bit of guilt. I feel guilt about that too, because it's like our time is limited, right? And at any time I could lose one of them. I know that, right? And so I don't want to like drift apart from them and just not see them because I feel like I'm above them or something. But I guess I can't deny the energy leak that I feel. And it's not even so much seeing them face to face. It's like a lot of hanging out with them is that they'll go on Discord, which is like a video chat, kind of like Zoom, but and they would just chat and either watch sports, or they would play video games or watch a movie or something like that. And that started during the pandemic, I guess, because everyone was like, so and everyone's busy. We got our families and stuff like that, so we don't see each other as much in person. But whenever they plan something in person, I go there because it's like I do want to see them and hang out with them, and I get a lot more out of that than just this kind of like super low frequency online interaction where they're just playing video games or whatever. And I think that's where I would get drained, is when I would do that and feel like I'm not really connecting with them in any meaningful way at all. And so they kind of razz me for not showing up to that stuff anymore. But I'm like, you know what? It's just not for me anymore. I'm sorry. I'm just not in that place where I want to do that anymore. So
Yeah, another perspective is because when we are true to ourselves, when we are authentic, that's when our inner strength sort of builds up. But when we are playing roles, when we are trying to fit in, that's when the frequency goes down.
mm-hmm.
So if you're with a person that is pretending or playing roles, that is not able to be their true self, then that's a lower frequency, right? And also, if you try to be yourself, but the person is not able to appreciate or to respond to that, then you feel that it's difficult for you to be your true self. So you sort of lower your frequency to more harmonize with the other person. But in this supportive friendship that we're talking about here, is like, I'm authentic, and then the friend is authentic back. And when the friend is authentic, I feel I can be even more authentic. And then when I'm even more authentic, the friend feels that he can be even more authentic. It's a positive feedback that is not a leakage, but it's a strengthening friendship rather than a draining friendship.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I got out of the men's group that you created. Exactly what you described. Because and to be honest, when we started, I was really nervous about it a little bit, like because the concept around it was that we would all do a group meditation together, and then we would all just share whatever we felt like talking about. And like I've always had, I guess, a fear or a kind of anxiety around public speaking. Like I'm actually very comfortable like a one-on-one talking with people, but whenever there's like a group of people and I'm like, okay, it's like time to talk about something, like tell me, that whole thing. There's like, go around the room and tell us about yourself. Or it's like, that's always given me a lot of anxiety. So that was like a really cool way to step out of my comfort zone. And I love the way you framed it, where it's like, just, speak from your heart. Like, and that whole idea, it's like, who cares if you stumble or you pause for 30 seconds and you don't know what to say, or just like the meditation would ground you and bring you right into your heart. And then it was like, okay, just share whatever you feel like sharing, whatever you want to talk about. And it was really, really cool. It was really, really beneficial for me to do that. And it felt like I actually overcame a lot of the fears around that. Like,
Yeah, I remember you did progress week after week after week.
yeah. Yeah. I've taken that with me now too. Like, as before, I would shy away from things like that. Now it's like, even we have a lot of, we do a lot of Zoom meetings with Swan now, where sometimes we'll have, anywhere between 6 other people to, 10 to, we do one every 2 weeks that's got everyone in the company, which is like 75 or 80 people. And so that something like that would be really out of my comfort zone too, to talk in front of that many people on, even on Zoom, never mind in person. So, and so I guess it's the whole thing about like speaking from inside, like anything we try, if we try to go from speak and think about everything, overthink everything and frame it all in our head, it never works out. Like I've tried that. Like, oh, I've got a job interview. I'm going to think about everything I need to say and try to memorize it. Like that never works. I remember I had a horrible interview where I tried to frame in my head all the questions they would ask me and how I would respond. And it was the worst. So from then on, I was like, you know what? That does not work for me. I'm just going to, you know, do my research on the company or whatever, and then just say what I feel in the moment. Just like overthinking does such a disservice. And I feel like so many people, me included, have spent most of my life overthinking everything and not just being and just going with the flow. And so that's another thing that really resonated with me with the men's group and with our meditations and stuff like that is learning to just go with the flow more and not have to feel like you need to plan everything and analyze everything. And yeah,
Like we're doing here today. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So I feel the flow is going towards, you basically had a very intense last year. It was
Yeah.
2022 for you. It was like moving, losing your father, changing jobs,
Yeah.
getting another daughter, moving
Yeah.
again. And I had a period a little bit similar to this. When I lost my father, I got my first daughter in a very in a similar time period. And for me, that was like a cocktail of fear because my father was always he was my buffer financially and I guess emotionally. And becoming a father at the same time as I lost those things, it just broke my trust and I became very fearful from have been in flow with the universe. I felt I was, very free. I was freelance. I was doing projects, and so I was earning money, but I didn't have a fixed income. And then to be in this situation of being a father and no backup nor safety net, so I was thrown into few years of really struggling. So I stopped believing that money would come, or that enough money would come in. And I started working because of fear. So I
Mm-hmm.
stopped doing this freelance stuff and I took a safe job and I basically re entered the matrix
Mm-hmm.
and got stuck there for quite a while. So I'm curious how you have felt now after all those changes, breaking out of the matrix and all those moves, and what has happened to you after this, would you say?
Yeah. It's funny because I would never think of myself like, now that I've exited the matrix, I can't imagine, like it's a one-way street. Like I can't imagine ever possibly completely going back into the matrix. But I think after just, yeah, like the tumultuous changes of 2022 and just uncertainties of where we were going to live, what we were going to do, and then on top of losing my father, and then there was the shift where I was like, you know what, we need to, because we were considering even going back to Costa Rica while my wife, like when we found out my wife was pregnant, or before we got pregnant, the idea was to go back to Costa Rica. And I don't know, just figured that like maybe even consider moving there or something, because we decided we don't want to raise our kids in this culture. We didn't put my oldest in school. Like we were so fortunate that they were, both my girls were too young to really understand what was happening with COVID and all the fear that was being pushed. So they were kind of insulated from that, which was nice. But it kind of coincided with my oldest starting school, and she would have gone into kindergarten. And in where we were in Toronto, they were mandating little kindergartners to wear masks in school, and they were separating them into little groups, and they couldn't leave their 3 or 4 kid group. And it was just, I was like, there's no way my daughter's first experience of school is going to be like that. I'm not going to allow it. So, and my wife was resistant to it at first, but luckily we've been going on a similar journey, and now she's at a place where she's like, yeah, they're not going to public school. So we both agree that we don't want them to grow up in this culture. And so we were like, so what do we do? Like, we either move, somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Canada, I guess, and maybe try to find a community of people here, or we go where we felt that signal and that high frequency in Central America. And so we still planned on going back. And then once we found out she was pregnant, we were like, oh, like, I guess we could still go back and maybe have the baby there. And I just got the sense from my wife that I got this. She's always been an anxious person, and she's a very emotional, a quintessential, female, feminine energy. Like, she's very emotional. She's very empathetic. She's anxious, indecisive, all the traits. Like, she's very feminine energy. So I got the sense from her that she was getting anxious about it all. And so I had the thought, I was like, you know what? We've been through a crazy year so far. We've been moving a lot. We've been all over the place. I was like, I kind of made the decision. I was like, let's rent something here. Let's stay here. Let's get a house. We'll rent for, however long we have to. We'll have the baby here, and then we'll go from there. We'll go with the flow. See how we feel. We'll revisit it whenever we need to. And that seemed to calm her down. Like, it was, I think she just needed some concrete, idea of what the future would look like. And I think especially for a woman who's pregnant, like, she's like, I can't imagine like not knowing where you're going to give birth. Like, you want to kind of have, it's like that whole idea of laying a nest down, right? Like, it's like you want to have some idea and some control over, or some semblance of control over what's going to happen during the pregnancy and when the baby comes. So we made that decision. And I guess it was around that time that it was like, I started to see the benefits of, and just like, as my responsibilities as a father and as the man of the house, to have some semblance of stability. And like, I wanted to be the rock for the family. And I wanted to, I'm making the money. My wife was a social worker, and basically after having our kids, and they basically still in Canada, they're mandating social workers and anyone that is basically funded by the government or even remotely government funded, not even some just private companies too, to be vaccinated against COVID and stuff. And we felt wrong about that. So she basically is not going back to work. And she's going to be a stay-at-home mom for the foreseeable future and so we're lucky enough that I can support the family on a single income. And I just was like, you know what, it's a crazy world right now. There's so many changes. I need to be kind of like the rock for my family, and I need to take responsibility, be the decision maker. And so I kind of shifted away from the inward journey and the spiritual journey. And I guess in a way you can say that I don't see it as re-entering the matrix, because I'm still like, I feel like I still have taken the teachings and everything from my spiritual journey. And I feel it's not like I block away my emotions or anything like that. Like, I still feel them. I recognize them. But I think there is some truth to, I've kind of moved away from living from my heart and kind of rebalanced it back towards which was the normal for me for most of my life, which is living from my thoughts and from like kind of like logic and reasoning. And that came from a place of being like, okay, I need to protect and provide for my family and because I've got a wife and I've got 3 daughters now coming, like the third baby coming is also a girl, so 3 girls. So I'm like, if anything, this family needs a solid masculine energy to even out all the feminine energy and stuff like that. So I think and that kind of coincided with me. Like it almost felt meant to be that I read Jer's book, The Wall Speaks, around that time too, which kind of like gets into the importance of masculinity and strong masculine leaders for society and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it all started. And then before I knew it, I wasn't meditating at all. Which now thinking back, like it's like there's such a benefit for meditating. I don't really know. I don't have a good answer for why I stopped meditating. I really don't know why I did. I
Does
guess it's like that I feel like it's like you said, it's like the ideas got into my head that maybe meditate, it doesn't align with being a good masculine leader or something. I don't know, but
in that book, does he talk about meditation?
I don't think, I'm trying to remember. I don't think he talks about meditation, but I also follow him on Twitter and stuff like that. And I don't agree with all of his views. I'll say, like he's got his like kind of framework around what a frame man is and all that stuff. But and I think at one point he did, and I know Alex Vetsky has talked about it too. Like they've kind of like, psychedelics and meditation and all that stuff, like basically makes a man more feminine or something like that. And it's like, it's like that whole idea of spirituality and being in touch with your heart and your intuition is more of a feminine energy. But I always feel like there's got to be more of a balance to that. Like everyone has masculine and feminine energy. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think you need to go so like dualistic with it, but yeah, he has definitely like his views on it are like, meditating is not productive or conducive, but I disagree with that. Just from my experiences meditating and how beneficial it is. But
Yes. So, in this podcast, we talk about the new consciousness, which is basically like a revamp of the Christ consciousness, like the level of consciousness that Jesus was able to achieve. This is sort of now more available for more people to step into. And I call it the Bitcoin consciousness sometimes here, right? And the higher consciousness version of this stable man, as you say, for the family.
mm-hmm.
And this is when the father is not in control of his emotions, but he has dealt with all the distorted emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So like traumas and things like that, it's all sorted out. So the emotions is not a problem because they're just flowing normally. And this creates a comfort for the family because it's like a strong emotional presence in the family.
Right. And like, sorry to interrupt, but as you say, energies transmit, right? So if you have a lot of anxious energy, which is usually like pent up, unresolved stuff, right? Then that transmits to your family and that, especially to your children and your wife who are, very close to you spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think it could be, if you're this framed man that the book talks about, because I read it when you posted about it on Twitter.
Right.
It can give conflicting signals to the family from my perspective, because you appear strong and stable, but most of the kids are very open to frequencies, and they are sort of, they can see and feel what's going on. So if the father is in their inner vision, he's like a broken or a weak man, that didn't deal with his emotions. that suppressed his emotions, but he's appearing to be like authoritative and like, yeah, now we go there, now we do this, now we go that. It gives sort of multi-personality kind of signal to the kids if we're talking about energy flows. So if we think more about like Jesus as sort of a model for this higher consciousness, stable male in the family, it's the trust is not in his rational mind and in his skill of earning money, but the trust is in his connection with the universe, because when all those traumas are fixed, then the universe starts working for us rather than against us. So as long as the universe works against us, that's because we have unresolved things on the inside. So these unresolved things wants to be resolved. So that's the sort of opposition we get, and we need to solve all these problems on the outside world. So in the old consciousness, the world, we feel that the world is against us, that the universe is sort of conspiring against us, and we have to fight to win over it. And when we clean out on the inside, we just feel that the universe is on our side. So the trust is not in the job, but the trust is that we're children of God, so to speak, and we are free to do whatever we want on this earth. We don't have to do things because of fear. But that's not so easy to see. Like, I couldn't see it when my father died and my daughter was born, and this is sort of why I'm asking this, because it can be really this shock to the system of responsibility, and then it's like difficult to take the high road. And I was wondering, like, if you then consider to go back to the matrix, so to speak.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think there's two different types of like going back to the matrix, right? It's like the, going back and drinking the Kool-Aid of whatever the propaganda tells you, and using all the institutions like everything's fine, like the education system isn't broken and our food isn't full of poison, and then there's the spiritual one too, where because I think, just when you were talking, I was thinking about my dad, and because he exactly how you described it, he was in the spiritual matrix of the universe is working against him, and all the problems in his life were from things outside of him, like the women in his life and all the people that have wronged him, and all that stuff. And then his spiritual awakening of realizing that that was all within him, and he was the cause of all of his problems, was a huge shift for him. But he didn't resolve his traumas, and I think that's kind of where his growth kind of stopped, and I think stagnated. And because he didn't go in, he didn't go deep inward and deal with a lot of, and I mean, it must be hard. He was in his 60s when he realized all this. So it's like it builds up, right? The longer you push away your emotions and your traumas and your beliefs and your illusions of stuff, the more entrenched they are. And so that's what I think was missing. And that's why I think he was ready to let go so quickly. And I just think he wasn't capable of doing that, right? And if anything, like, he would always talk about how amazed he was at my spiritual growth at only, I'm 37 now, and he was just like, I was not nowhere near where you are right now. And he would just like say that how proud he is of me and my journey and stuff like that. So if anything, it's these kind of things that sometimes we don't recognize them, right? Because we put walls up, we push them out. All these things that we don't even know. Like, I'm doing meditations with you, and like a lot of the visions and the things that would come up are from like deep in childhood, and stuff that you didn't even think was in there, like buried deep in your consciousness. And so I think it's like you say, popping those bubbles or bringing those out is really how you resolve a lot of that stuff. And so, um, if anything, talking to you now and reconnecting with you is reinvigorated my my desire to continue that work, because I think it is important. And I think that's where Jer in that book does go wrong, because he talks about his heart, like, the first few chapters are about how horrible, or how hard his life was, and all the, it sounds like he did have a pretty hard life at the beginning. But it's like, if your answer is to just put on a facade of being a framed man and not do the work, I think he's doing his readers a disservice by not talking about the importance of resolving a lot of that trauma and that.
Like you say, he basically encouraged people to just layer things even more. Like you said, for your father, that he realized this when he was 60, and then he felt it was too late, and maybe he gave up
I think
because of
he was
this.
afraid too. He was afraid because that's another thing I'll say is like, it is scary. Like, I remember, I think it was our last meditation we did, like some real like deep fears came up. Like I'm not just talking like fears. I'm talking like that really like visceral fear feeling. And
I
so
remember, yeah.
it's like that. It's like the darkness, right? And it's like and I think that, without even thinking about it, it's like, I don't want to go there. It's like, so it's, I understand. And even just like when he would told me that he had meditated once, and he, with home chants, and he went really deep, and he, you know, and I think that experience is terrifying, right? It can be both terrifying and incredible and emotional and all that stuff. So it's like what a really high dose psychedelic trip can do for you, right? Like, you can have an ego death, and it can be absolutely terrifying. And so that's, I think, the stuff it's like the proof of work that Bitcoin teaches. Like, it's like, sure, you don't want to do the stuff that's hard, right? But sometimes the benefits are so amazing that it's you. Like, we all know the benefits of hard work and to create something and do something. Like, the feeling you get after is makes it worth it, right? But it's like our egos or whatever, wants to try to convince us not to do that, out of because of the fear, I guess, right? The fear, the fight or flight response we get. But
Yeah, it's like spiritual awakening is like you start walking the opposite way. You start walking into fears and start facing fear. But before the spiritual awakening, we are basically spending the time running away from the fear and burying the fear. And then we just change direction.
yeah.
And the path becomes about facing our demons until there are none left.
Do you feel like do you have no more demons left, or is there still some in there?
Oh no, I have, yeah, I have. But it's like along the journey, because every demon, so to speak, has an external representation. Everything we
Mm.
have on the inside is represented in our reality. So for every demon you face inside, your life becomes brighter in some area. And then you find another demon. And so it's like your life on this path just becomes brighter and brighter and brighter every day. And I like to say it's not about the goal, it's about the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the journey on the spiritual path, I find it very interesting to face my demons. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. And then the side effect of the life becoming easier and more flowing. Like you don't need to control things, and things just happen more and more naturally. And then you have these synchronicities and people coming into your life, and it becomes more like a fairy tale.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've experienced that too, where I feel like I'm just kind of going with the flow of creation, like you say, and things just happen. Like, there's so many things that have happened in my life that I can look back on, and you almost just think back and be like, wow. Like, you think about all the things that led up to that, and it's just like, how did that happen, right? It's like, And when you're trying to force things and go against things, it's the exact opposite. And I feel like this was a part of my journey to, you know, the ups and downs of a journey like this was necessary for me to see the benefit of kind of this work and continue it, and not and basically do it before the strength and for my kids and for the family, because as you say, it's like they feel the frequency. Like you can act all you want, or you can put up the barriers and the walls because it's easier all you want, but to actually have the energy of being in, on that frequency and in touch with your inner self, and that's like it's another level.
And you're showing them that they don't have anything to worry about, which is the
Yeah.
truth. You know,
Right.
it's in mainstream society, it's like you have to worry about all these things. So it
Yeah.
becomes everything is about fear, and
Yeah.
fear breeds fear. But, you know, we don't have to worry about things. That's just the fears. So imagine, hanging out with your kids and showing them that they don't have anything to be worried about. Like how will their life be if they believe this deeply, deeply, that they will
Mm-hmm.
always be safe?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a profound thing, right? Is like, because I see it so much now. Like in a lot of ways, I feel like the awakening I've been on has released me from a lot of fears. Like obviously they're not, I still have fears, obviously, but you just see how much of the matrix is just everything is like the main frequency is fear, because it's like every little thing. Like I just remembering a conversation. Like my wife has decided to do a home birth this time, and it's very like I realize the more we talk to people about it and tell people that, it's pretty uncommon. Like I know it's probably growing in popularity for people to do that, but the responses she gets all the time is like, "Oh my God, aren't you scared? Aren't you afraid?" Like it's like this idea that the systems we have in place, like the hospitals and the healthcare system, that they're all safety nets, right? They're all just like, no, we're doing this all for so you don't have to worry, right? But you're right. Like it's if we just go with the flow of things and we react when we need to react, and not because having a baby is a scary is there's definitely some fear there, right? Like I had a dream actually, it must have been like about a week ago now, and it was horrible. Like it was like my wife had fallen off, like in the dream she had fallen off a balcony and fallen right on her like pregnant belly, and I like ran down, and like she fell and I ran down. She's like, "Oh, I landed right on the baby," and it was just like, and I woke up and it was like my heart was beating, like, and that was like a repressed fear, obviously, because it's like I hadn't actually thought about that much about how scary it is to have a baby, right? Like as a father, I just want my wife to be healthy, and I want the baby to be healthy, and I want everyone to be good, and but the more we in our heads we think about all the scenarios, and we play out all, oh, what if she, it's an emergency, she has to go to the hospital. Like these are all just creations in our head. Like if we just go with the flow of things,
Yeah.
whatever happens will happen, right? And I feel like that
It,
that is the best way to go about. Like in my experience, that is 100% the best way to live.
it is something about the spiritual path that, yes, like you say, most of it is in our head, but then
Mm,
some things are actually true also. Like if you put your hand on a hot plate, you will burn yourself.
mm,
It's not just in your head, right?
right.
So I think part of the spiritual path is to figure out which are just in my head, which are just the illusions, and which ones are actually true. Like gravity is true for all of us. So
Right.
we need to play by that rule. We
Right.
can't start flying. And if you walk out in the road, a car will hit you. Mainstream society, they go completely into this and say that everything is like this. Everything is
Mm,
dangerous, and everything I imagine in my head is true. And then
mm,
on the other hand, it can be like in the spiritual path, and you say, like, oh, everything is my head. It's just illusion. Everything is just illusion. You can walk out in the street. So the truth is so sort of somewhere in between. And the difference, I think, when we come on the spiritual path is whether we take decisions from fear or if we take decisions from like a calm place, the state of mind we are in. Because if we are in a fearful state of mind, we will take decisions out of fear. And usually they are like imagined. But all these real things, like I said, the wall, the road, the hot plate, this is like when we are calm, we can understand the normal limitations of the physical reality, and we can take a decision that is in harmony with our inner self and in harmony with the limitations. But that took a long time for me to figure out which is which.
Yeah, I feel like I can recognize, because that was a big thing for me after COVID, was like, I'm not, like, I made the decision early on. Like, I'm not, I got wrapped up in the fear in the very beginning, obviously, because it was just like, I felt like it was just everywhere. But it was right around that time that I like pretty early on, I was like, I'm not going to live in fear anymore about this. Like, just like going and seeing someone, it's like, you could step outside, like you said, like you could just, and like you could die in any way. Like, well, I'm not going to worry about some invisible thing that's going to come and get me if I go and talk to someone. Like, it's just so. And that was when I really realized, that was like kind of early in my journey when I realized that, like, the difference between living from a place of fear and, not saying that you should never be fearful, or that you should never feel fear, right? Because that's what I think, in a way, that you go wrong, where it's like you can just wall off your feelings of fear and they'll just go away. It's like, you can recognize the fear and sit with it, but don't let it dictate your life. Don't let it guide you. Don't let it make decisions for you. Especially, don't react to it. Right. I think that's the key. That was normal for my wife for a while, and now she's like getting better at recognizing, okay, so this is just a place of fear right now. Like, she gets in her little fear spells and all that, and then she can like kind of sit with it. And I'm like, listen, you're spiraling right now. Like, sit with it for a little bit, meditate on it maybe, and then once your head clears, then you can make feel what's right.
Yeah, it's like the emotions are like strings on a harp. And it's actually a guiding system for us. It's like helping us. It's like a sensory system that helping us to guide us in life. But when we have these traumas and stuff, dirt on the strings, then it's not in tune and it sounds terrible. And if we listen to the strings, if we listen to the emotions when they're not tuned, that's when it's fear-based, because it's not coming from the actual string, it's coming from the trauma that was stuck on the string. So if we listen to that trauma, we will be guided along the same path of the trauma. But when we sit with it, like you say, then the string clears, and then we can play the string, and it actually works as a guidance. It's just one more sensory input among all the other sensors we have. So not discarding emotions completely and not trusting emotions completely, but they're like, is this a distorted emotion, or is this like a true guidance or true sensory input?
Right. And the more you sit with it, and the more you go deep like that, the more you're better discern between the two, right?
Yeah. Did you like that analogy with the
Yeah.
heart?
No, I think that's good. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Because, like, it can be, the fear is as an emotion is there for a reason, right? Like, the fight or flight response and all that stuff is there for a reason when there's immediate danger. But when it's a distortion from something in the past, deeply buried in your subconscious, that's when it you can guide you in the wrong direction, because it's an illusion, as you said. It's not real.
Yeah, it's not real at this present time. It was real in the past.
Right. And there's like, it just blows my mind how many kind of like filters and we put up in our day-to-day life, right? Like, and the things that we're capable of blocking away for so deeply that we don't even know they're there. And then they come up in all these, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about. And you can see why most of the population doesn't go deep to resolve them. Goes back to the easier, right? What's easier? What's harder?
Yeah, and it reminds me of this. Yesterday, I was out walking and I decided to just stop and sit down a moment. And I got this vision from when I was young. And it was like my mother finding me somewhere. And she said, like, what are you doing here? And it was like, you're out of your script. It's like if you don't follow your script, you're sort of flagged, like something is wrong with this one. He's not where he's supposed to be. It was really this Truman Show feeling I got that, we are supposed to follow these rules, how to be a human on this planet. And when we go out of this, people start just asking questions. What's wrong with this guy? And I think that was one of the points where I closed down my inner guidance to just walk around, to just have fun, and like we do when you're kids. And then it comes these incidents when, oh, now something is wrong. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to, follow the script that my parents have dictated to me. Did you ever have anything like that happen to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like at a young age, especially in this culture, that you know, it's like, when does it even happen? When we're like, it's almost before we form memories, when we start to come away from our inner guidance, and we just kind of like, because I see my 5-year-old daughter, and she's so silly sometimes. I love it, because she'll just like say funny words or move her body in a funny way, and that's like her spirit or inner self kind of like coming through, right?
Expressing itself. Yeah.
Expressing itself, exactly, right? And so I try to, like, I'm trying to figure out when. I don't know when that happens, but it's something to do with the modern society, where it's like someone will tell you that's weird, or that yeah, like even just the idea of like, oh, something being weird, or like, it's like, well, no, there's normal and there's weird, right? Like, if you're weird, you don't want to be weird. But it's like, so it's like you start to meld yourself around what you think people, like, a regular person should act. And I guess that's when we slowly come away from our true selves, and we have the judging. We become judged, and we judge. And I think I mean, it must have something to do with once we get into school, because we go into school so young. And that's really when you're 4 or 5 years old, where you're really starting to come into your own identity and yourself and all that stuff. And it all kind of like coincides with the direction, and standing in line, and sitting down, and when you're told to, and lining up, and learning this, and doing this test. And I don't know, because I remember when I was young, I told my mom, like, I didn't want to go to school. And I think my daughter had the same thing. Like, you go and it's like, I don't want to go to school today. It's like my inner self is saying, I don't need to go to school. I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, I remember my mom telling me, well, you have to. I was like, that was like a big moment for me, I'll never forget that, because it was like, I have to. Like, I don't have a choice here.
Hmm.
And it's like, that was the beginning of maybe that was the beginning of being like, oh, I guess some things I don't have the freedom to choose what I want to do.
Yeah, I think it must be a shock to every child
Yeah.
when you said it was like I could really relate to that. Like, what? Because it's
Yeah.
just so natural to just follow your inner guidance when you're a kid. And then
Yeah.
someone saying that you can't do what you want to when you want to, it's like, what? This is not normal. This is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to come back to, right? And that's the flow, and just
Yeah.
flow with that.
And I would love to learn, like, because we're trying to raise our kids right, obviously, but it's like, I guess it's like figuring out where that to draw that line. Because I mean, we obviously like set rules, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to watch a show," and we'll say no, or "Oh, I want to, eat this now or have this snack or whatever it is," right? And we'll say no, and it's like, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to just thinking in my head now, like, where's that balance? I don't want to. I want them to be able to be aware of their heart and their what they want, like, and to follow that. And I think a big part is the education. Like, I want them to be able to learn about what they want to learn about. Like, if my daughter really loves whales and kind of wildlife and stuff like that, so it's like I really want to encourage her. Like, if she really likes that, she wants to get books on it all the time. It's like, that's great, learn about that. Like, I don't want to ever discourage her about, like, oh well, no, you need to learn math now, or no, you need to learn how to do you know this now. It's like I really do want her to follow her heart with what speaks to her and what she wants to do. But I guess it's just figuring out that balance. Because I like, if we don't want them to grow up in the matrix, so to say, it's like, but we grew up in the matrix, so it's like we're obviously going to recreate in a lot of ways the way that our parents raised us without even knowing that we're doing it, right? So I guess it's just trying to figure out the best way to allow them to follow their own path.
Yeah, I'm drawing a parallel to what I said before about learning the difference between false things to worry about and real things to worry about. And I was
Mm,
just thinking, what about if we could teach the kids this, because this is something I had to learn when I was an adult. It felt like in my childhood and my school, they just confused me. And
mm,
then when I had a spiritual awakening, then I had to figure out what is actually just in my mind and what is the real dangers. And that was the big issue because like I said on another episode, I drowned because I thought my life was a dream. So it was a very real thing for me because basically I thought my physical reality, I mixed up my physical reality with a dream.
mm,
And so it had very real life consequences for me. And I see it now as that was one lesson where I learned, this is the dream and this is the physical reality. Because I was like multidimensional, so I was like visiting different realities. And for me, it was really difficult. And I think, many kids today have it similar like this also. I think I'm not so special, you know, seeing other dimensions and being conscious in your dreams, lucid dreaming and these kind of things. And so it's sort of like multidimensional lifestyle, if you say. Now, what
mm.
we do normally is we just force the kids into it's only this reality and this is how we do it here. When for
Right.
me, it was like, aha, am I supposed to focus on this one? But what about all these others? No, you're crazy. Don't believe in that. Uh-huh. But then they were so real, so I couldn't ignore them, right? And so no one where was teaching me which reality is the physical one and which are these, the where you can change anything because in dreams you can just jump through walls and everything and fly and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if we could help kids with this kind of stuff, it would be so much easier.
Yeah, it's almost like sometimes I want to just I find I do this with Bitcoin too, where I just want to, fast forward and be a part of the change that it's going to have for humanity. And I have that same thing where I'm like, man, like if once all of humanity is in this higher consciousness and we've upgraded, it's like how we'll raise kids and how we'll, like I've had this recently where I've been thinking, and I've been driving around, like I was driving downtown last night, and just I've been seeing things more being like, wow, it's like, instead of being like, wow, we live in the future or whatever, it's like, wow, we live like antiquated. Like this is like, I've just been having these weird things where it's like, yeah, it just feels like we're so far back from where we could be. And I think our consciousness is a big part of that. Like we've lost our true power of a lot. I think we've lost a lot of powers that we probably could have with our, if we really were able to upgrade spiritually. And all these kind of like belief systems and layers we put on top of our reality that we shape, that we then shape our kids into doing the exact same thing. It's like, how will that look in 50 years, 100 years, when all of humanity's upgraded? It's like, sometimes I just want to, like, I guess it's understanding that the constraints that I have on raising my kids and on my consciousness being in a product of how I grew up, and all the constraints that I put on myself, and that maybe society had a part in putting on me and stuff like that. I don't know.
I think it's amazing that you've been so vulnerable and so open, sharing about all these aspects in your life. So I want to thank you for today. I hope you have a good feeling about it, that you didn't expose yourself too much.
Yeah, no, I don't. It was a great conversation. Thank you for having me, Sama. It's been great to reconnect with you, and yeah, I'd love to chat more. So thanks for having me.
Great. Goodbye to all the listeners. Thank you to Hurley again, and see you next time.